Special edition of the Post-Postgame Show here across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, all presented by Stateside Vodka. Go to statesidevodka.com. Use the keyword JAKIB. Get 15% off a 1-liter bottle. If you're in Pennsylvania, they'll deliver the 1-liter bottle. I'm joined now by Dan Sileo. Our conversation on this football game, a 42-30 loss by the Eagles, is going to center and zero in, Dan Sileo, on what you know best, and you know a lot about football. You know defense, and we're going to spend this conversation on defense as the Kansas City offense not only moved the football at will, they ran the football right past the big front four of the Eagle defense and jammed it down their throat all game long.
You know, Joe, when Jesse James was robbing banks back in the day, that dude used a gun when he walked into the bank, and he held people up. The Eagles, quite frankly, when they go on Tuesday to get their paychecks, these guys will have their heads down because they got steamrolled in this game. 200 yards on the ground, 6.4 yards per game. That's like having one hand tied behind your back and not being able to stop when you're getting punched in the face. I actually thought this, Joe. I didn't think the Eagle offense played that poorly. Coming off a short work week, I think, quite frankly, they were much better when it came to being fluid. I thought there were some really good plays that Jalen made. My problem wasn't with Jalen. It's quite frankly what you said. The defense just basically, they were catching. They were getting knocked off the football. And for an offensive line that was maligned coming into this game, I mean, the Chiefs were not being able to run the ball. They went for 200 yards, and Fletcher Cox, somebody needs to put that guy's face on a milk carton because he was missing in action. I mean, he's the highest paid Eagle. And do you know in this game, he did not register one statistic. No pressure, no anything. No assist tackle, nothing. Can't have that in a football game. And by the way, they're not as good as the Chiefs. So I don't know what the expectations were for Eagle fans in this game. I mean, is this what I expected? A 12-point win? Probably. I mean, they're just not good enough right now, Joe. But the offense, they played well. It's a helter-skelter offensive line on that side of the football. So quite frankly, they were just outmanned in this football game. They're not as good as a team that won and went to, I should say, three straight AFC championship games. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say here. 32 of 48, 387 yards for Jalen, 2 touchdowns. They even ran the ball 103 yards. They had 19 carries in the ball game, which was much better than what they did on Monday night. However, I mean, it's just not good enough. When you run the ball 32 times, think of this on an Andy Reid offense. So Andy Reid had 32 rushing attempts. Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes had 32 attempts. Right. 32 attempts when you got the best talent in the game. You're not going to win that game when you see 200 yards rushing.
Dan, let me ask you about defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, because just like head coach Nick Sirianni, he's young. Now, he comes to the position with a reputation of learning under some great coaches. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great defensive coordinator, in this league. This is the real deal. They got the ball ran down their throat. The linebackers were non-existent. I don't know if they blitz at all. So very little pressure, if any, on Mahomes. What do you make of Gannon and his work as the coordinator?
I think the secondary of the Eagles is a massive issue, okay? I mean, and they were so concerned about blitzing him. Like you said, Joe, there were very little pressure on the guy. Monty Kiffin told me this years ago, the former defensive coordinator of the Buccaneers who won that Super Bowl back in the day with that SAP Buccaneer defense. If you're going to blitz somebody, you've got to move these guys off their spot. However, a guy like Mahomes, you see those underhand throws, this guy is ambidextrous. He throws at the opposite hands. They were just so concerned. I'm going to make this point to you, Joe. My opinion, I think the defensive coordinator is happy with what happened today because to me, there was no way to slow that guy down because when your defensive front is not putting the pressure on them like that, your secondary's back there and you see what they threw the ball for. I mean, he only threw the ball for 270 yards, but he was 21 of 30 in the game with 5 touchdowns. They didn't really have to do anything because they knew the secondary was going to play a zone defense back there. They gave up everything underneath. Hey, was it me or was Hill wide open? I mean, I thought I was watching a Southeastern Conference game. This guy was so wide open. Usually you don't see that. And so I think personally, I think they were happy to keep the game as close and as competitive as it was for them. And some people are out there listening going, it wasn't competitive. This thing could have been a complete train wreck. Okay? It could have been a complete train wreck. 200 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. I mean, this thing truly wasn't close. And Gannon did not want to go after Patrick Mahomes. Now, Jimmy Johnson told me this years ago, Joe, he said this. He goes, either you're going to play press coverage and die a quick death, or you're going to play a zone coverage and die a slow death and bleed to death. Which one do you want to do? And Gannon decided to do the slow death and try to keep his team in it by doing that and doing that umbrella defense and keeping everything underneath. That's why as the game went on, the score got higher and higher. If they would have blitzed right away, that score would have been this score earlier, and the Eagles would have been out of the game. They just don't have the personnel right now to match up with Kansas City. Personally, I come out of this game, and I say this to you. I don't know what you were expecting. Did you really think that the Eagles were going to win this ball game? I never thought this. I thought it was going to be 31-17, something like that. I actually thought they hung around for about 2 quarters, but they were never going to be in this ball game.
Post-Postgame Show here across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel.
By the way, too, Joe, 9 penalties. I mean, they're the most penalized team in the NFL right now. Let's go. Let's get a little bit more discipline on this football team here.
That's where I was going to go next, Dan. I was going to ask you about the penalties. Some critical. Josh Sweat jumped twice, once on a 3rd and 6 that resulted in a 3rd and 1 that resulted in the extension of the play that ultimately led to a touchdown. I never played the game anywhere close to the level to be able to ask as an authoritative figure. You have, when your team as a team is causing and creating that many infractions, that many penalties, how is it fixed? Why does it continue to happen? Is it a coaching thing? Is it a players thing? What's going on there?
It's all of that, Joe. It's a reps thing. And this goes back to the exhibition season. You know, I've been talking about this lack of preparation for this season. To me, it's a lack of preparation going into the NFL season. When you have a new coordinator, you have a new head coach, you have a new system, everybody is looking at the system. I mean, remember something about the Eagles. The Doug Peterson system, how many years did they run that? They knew and they understood and they know the nuances of what was being asked of them. I think there's a lot of guys on this football team are not sure of what's being asked of them. And so to me, that's why you see these pre-snap penalties. That's why you get, I mean, you're thinking so much sometimes, Joe. All of a sudden, is it on first sound? Is it on second sound? What is it? Or even if they go into an audible, all of a sudden you lose track of the snap count because a defense will slide. I thought the Chiefs did a lot of that today too. They went from a 3-4 look to a 43 look, and what they did was they were sliding in gaps. And so when you do that, you got guys in that offensive line. And let's not forget something here about the Eagles' offensive line. There's a lot of injuries in that O-line. Lane Johnson going into this game too, that issue there, that was going to set them back. So you've got injuries, you've got issues in the O-line, and also on the defensive line. So when you're seeing these pre-snap penalties and penalties on a football team, this is a prime example of a team not being prepared going into a regular season. They don't have the reps. How could you possibly think you were going to get 53 guys on the same page when you're going into those controlled scrimmages against the Jets or whomever, the Patriots, and then when you get into a game situation that you've got to sit there and go by repetition. They don't have the repetition right now. That's why you're seeing all these penalties.
Dan, what does Fletcher need to do? This is an all-pro. This isn't somebody that forgets how to play the position. This isn't somebody that doesn't command the payday that he received for the numbers and for the accomplishments that he's had. And then all of a sudden, we're 4 games into the 2021 season. 2 of the 4 Fletcher's had goose eggs on the stat sheet.
And he's got 1 sack on the year too, by the way, to even throw that more into the mix. Joe, I'll give you an example here. I had a friend of mine who played for the San Diego Chargers back in the day. His name was Bert Grossman. You guys probably know him. He was an Eagle too. Did some stuff there in Philadelphia, and his first 2 years he had 20 sacks. Bobby Ross comes in, changes the defense up, and it went down to 5. And not knowing what's being asked of him, I just got through talking again about some of the guys on that football team not being asked, not understanding what's being asked of them. I think Fletcher in that front 7 is going through a little bit of that renaissance as well with Gannon. I think Gannon really putting guys in different positions, putting guys on shade. Joe, you could put a guy in a 2 technique versus a 1 technique and a 3 technique and a 0 technique over the center. And that can change a nuance of a guy's how he rushes the passer, how he plays the run. You could do that to even guys like Aaron Donald. So to me, I think Gannon has come in. He's got a set system. He wants to run this particular system. And to me, I think it's more about the personnel that's on the football team and everybody getting connected. You can't have the highest paid guy on the Philadelphia Eagles showing up with goose eggs and not being a factor. I'll tell you this, if I was Fletcher Cox and I saw 6.4 yards per carry, that's totally on you, bro. That's on you, man. You're the leader of that football team, and you're clearly the leader of that front 7. They got knocked off the football. They were catching. And to me, either you don't know what you're doing or you've got to simplify. We'll see what ends up happening here in the next ball game, but I tell you, I saw this in the second half of the 49er game last week, Joe. The 49ers knocked them off the football, and that's how they took control of the football game. And I think the Chiefs saw the same thing. And the difference between last week and this week, Chiefs did it for 60 minutes. The 49ers did it for 30 minutes.
And don't forget, Dallas did it to them on Monday night.
That's
as
correct.
Well. Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott ran the football downhill all that game. Dan, what's the correction to be made if you know that Alex Singleton and the linebacking core is what it is? What's the correction? If your linebackers aren't strong enough to be playmakers or game changers, what's the correction on defense to shut down rushing the football? Again, you said it. Andy Reid runs the football.
32 attempts.
I mean,
Andy Reid, right? 32 attempts. You would have went like this. You mean throwing the ball? No, running the ball. And so teams now, and by the way, don't think every single team that is out there now knows that the Eagles are having trouble and they're struggling stopping the run. My God almighty, Joe, I'd rather have you throw 400 yards on me than rush the ball for 200 yards down my throat because you can't stop the clock. You can't get time of possession goes on your side of the ball too. What's the correction? Let me give it to you here. So what's the difference between this football team this year and last year's team in Dallas when it comes to how they're playing this year with all the turnovers? Dan Quinn has that Dallas defense playing fast, which means he simplified. If I'm Gannon, I simplify. I take as many schemes as I possibly can. Dave Wannstedt, who was my coordinator both in Dallas and at the University of Miami, when we struggled, simplify. Don't keep coming up with these complex fronts. Don't keep disguising. You thought you were going to try to confuse and see the Eagle defense thought they were going to confuse and slow down Patrick Mahomes. Dude, they ran the ball for 32 attempts for 200 yards on you. I mean, when's the last time Andy Reid had a 200-yard rushing game? I mean, Jesus criminy. So simplify this thing. Get these guys in gaps. Get these guys penetrating again. Last year I saw the Eagles were in the top 5 in sacks. They need to start being a football team. I mean, Schwartz's defense a year ago, at least even with the injuries that the Eagles had, they were playing fast. This team's not. They're catching and getting knocked off the football.
The Post-Postgame Show with Dan Sileo here across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Right back here tomorrow, 4 p.m., 4 to 6 with the National Football Show. Big lineup tomorrow. You'll cover a lot more of the game, Dan. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we're going to have Gary Cobb on from Fox 29. He comes on with us each and every single Monday, and he breaks down a little bit of what we saw in this game against the Chiefs. And I will say this to you. I thought Devontae Smith, they were able to get him the football more. 11 catches, 180, or he had 7 catches for 122. I thought that was great. They're trying to find and get him the football. I implementing him more in the offense. The tight ends, I wanted, and I said on Friday that they had to get more of the tight ends involved. By the way, that Goddard kid, he is a freaking awesome football player. And when you got him and Zach Ertz, those two dudes need to be in the passing game way more. I mean, if you're not going to have a legitimate running attack, you've got to get those guys more involved, because the best part of their attack are those 2 tight ends that they have. And again, too, I'll tell you one more time, Joe, I didn't have a problem with Jalen Hurts. I thought Jalen was pretty good in the ball game. As I mentioned, 32 of 48, 387. I really didn't have a problem with him. 2 touchdowns in the ball game. It was just that sorry-ass defense on the other side of the football. So we'll break that down with Gary Cobb from Fox 29.
Well, as one great college coach once said, as we look ahead to tomorrow, get the popcorn ready. For the
the beers. And the beers
for the National Football Show. Just do me a favor. Don't drop the mic like Lane Kiffin did.
Hey, Lane, this just in. Here's a note for you, Lane. When you drop the mic, you're supposed to kick the crap out of somebody, not get run over.
Good stuff tonight from Dan Sileo across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. It's our post-game show, all presented by Stateside Vodka. See you next time, everybody.